Well, I'm pleased to say that Jeremy Boring, the former Daily Wire CEO and director of the Pendragon Cycle, joins me now. Jeremy, welcome back.
Good to be back, and glad that you're back on your feet.
Well, I'm not actually back on my feet. I'm still on crutches. And
glad that you're back on the air.
Yeah, I'm back on the airways. Let's put it like that, which is certainly a step up from where I was last week. Interesting that your only other appearance, 23 million people watched that. In a way, that was the catalyst, actually. That show, because of the response on YouTube, for me to reach the conclusion you had reached many years before, obviously, with the Daily Wire, that the future is not conventional linear television, mainstream media, but that actually through the medium of places like YouTube, that is where young people in particular are going in bigger and bigger numbers. So thank you for being part of that catalyst. You were at the Daily Wire, I think how long in the end? For 11 years?
Just 10 years, yeah.
10 years.
We founded the company in Southern California, actually in my pool house.
Right. So I was going to ask you, because you managed to build a business, $1 billion business. And I've watched it with great admiration from afar. I've had lots of people from the Daily Wire come and go on Uncensored, obviously, including some who've left you, like Candice, and we'll come to that. When you started the Daily Wire, what was the dream that you had in your head? Has it manifested how you hoped in your wildest dreams, or in the end did it become something perhaps you preferred it not to have become?
Well, I think that, when you start something like the Daily Wire, of course you're going to make mistakes. Things aren't always going to go the way that you thought that they were going to go. I think we got a lot more hits than we had misses, though. When we first started the company, we saw the opportunity being afforded by emerging social media platforms to really help us get a message sort of around the traditional gatekeepers and directly to the people, a message that we thought needed to be expressed. We're all LA guys, so of course we also wanted to create culture, not just criticize culture. And we did all of those things over the decade that I was running the company alongside Caleb Robinson and in partnership with Ben Shapiro. So yeah, I think I would have to say that we really achieved most of the things that we set out to achieve. And of course, some of them we achieved beyond our wildest imagination. Of course, you couldn't have foreseen all of the mistakes either. But part of being an entrepreneur is being comfortable with the idea that you're going to make mistakes, that things aren't always going to go exactly according to plan or even according to plan at all. And you're going to have to react and pivot and make changes in the moment. I think we successfully did that too, which is why, as you say, we grew $1 billion worth of revenue over that 10 years and deployed all of that money in pursuit of those fundamental values that we had when we first established the company.
You created some massive stars, or taken people on and made them much bigger stars, and people have come and go. Ben's still at the top of the pyramid, and we'll come to him. Candice Owens was one of the people that you brought into the Daily Wire family, and then she had a spectacular falling out with everyone, notably over Israel. What's your view of Candice? I mean, my view, for what it's worth, I've had her on Uncensored many times. I know her a little bit away from the camera. She's unbelievably smart. She's a brilliant debater. She's compelling. She's great on camera, all of these things. But I've watched her in the last couple of years drifting to a place where I really, really have reservations about whether she believes half the stuff that she's putting on her show. Whether it's Brigitte Macron being a man or all the Charlie Kirk stuff or whatever it may be. I do think she's now gone down a path of deliberately promoting conspiracy theories for cash. What is your assessment?
Well, the problem with trying to wield cynicism for clicks is that cynicism ultimately wields you. And I think that's true of a lot of the sort of mistakes that we make in life. We always think that we're too clever for the sort of, the sort of evil that exists in the world to ever touch us. I've asked Candice on 2 separate occasions what she actually believes. On both occasions, she said, "I believe what the people believe. I am the voice of the people." And of course, both times, I don't know what that means, Candice. I've come to understand, though, at least from my point of view, I think she's articulating the idea of audience capture and expressing it as a positive value. Does she actually believe the things that she's saying? I don't know. I do know that if you say things long enough, you come to believe them. The most convincing voice in the world is our own voice. To your point, though, Candace is a genuine superstar. I mean, she has it, the thing that we talk about in show business. She has it in spades. I've never met anybody with any more of it. The camera absolutely loves her. To your point, she's whip smart. When she's using those powers in service of the true and the good and the virtuous, I think there's nobody better. But like you, I'm very concerned about the direction that she's taking it right now.
We've got a little mashup of things she said about the Daily Wire and about Ben. Let's take a look at this.
Commentary that is coming from Daily Wire management, Daily Wire commentators regarding things that I've said, positions that I have, or just appearances that I am making. And, you know, I would like to really leave the Daily Wire in the rearview mirror. Like when you break up with someone and you have a crazy ex, that was how it felt like being fired from the Daily Wire. Andrew Klavan of the Daily Wire released a 1-hour video essentially accusing me of many things, but referring to me as anti-Semitic, trying to link me to Nick Fuentes. This one is so fully off of the mother effing plantation. Truly, Ben Shapiro, fuck you and the midget horse that you rode in on. And I say that on behalf of the world.
What's your feeling when you hear that?
Well, she says it on behalf of the world, so it must be true. Listen, it's funny to hear Candace, who will do literally now, you know, over 50 episodes on the Charlie Kirk assassination, talk about other.
This intense debate moment between Ben Shapiro and Piers Morgan is grabbing attention online. Strong opinions, sharp responses, and a tense exchange you don't want to miss. Watch till the end and decide who made the stronger argument.
You know, to his supporters, he took me down. And it became a big viral thing, and people keep sending it to me now, and so on. I've watched his rise then from a very young guy, very sort of firebrand young conservative commentator, to somebody who is, you know, one of the most dominant figures in this space in the world. There's no question about that. And I have a lot of admiration for Ben. But he was coming on my show a lot when I was very pro-Israel's right to defend itself after October the 7th. And we were texting each other quite regularly. But when I became more critical, at the start of last year in particular and through last year, about the scale of Israel's response and what I perceived to be the disproportionality and so on, he just stopped coming on and then stopped replying to any messages of mine, completely froze me out. And I've had no more contact with him. And so a little part of me is like, Ben's, you know, he's brilliant and he's a fantastic proponent for free speech. But where does that sit if you do criticize Israel? I've never criticized Jewish people. I'm not remotely anti-Semitic. I think he probably knows that. But I do believe I have a right to criticize the Israeli government when they're waging a war of the kind they've been waging in Gaza. Now, regardless of whether you agree with me about that, it doesn't really matter. I'm surprised that he's cut me off like this. And I don't really understand it, other than he has a little bit of a blind spot about Israel when it comes to the free speech debate.
Well, I think Ben's been a great champion of freedom of speech. Of course, Ben, as probably the most famous religious Jew on earth, has very strong opinions about Israel. And, you know, I can't speak to him not texting you back or appearing on the show during that period of time. And I haven't been in daily contact with Ben in the last 10 months because of leaving the Daily Wire and all the changes that have happened as a result of that. But I can say that I think one might understand why, when so many voices in the media have gone so far in their, you know, quote unquote opposition to Israel, which was a very thin veneer on actual anti-Semitism. And I think as time has gone on, we see what's behind that mask more and more from so many people in public life. One can imagine that it's very difficult to hear nuance when nuance itself is being sort of weaponized as a way of masking actual anti-Semitism by so many.
But isn't that ultimately what the whole free speech debate comes down to? It's the ability to listen and tolerate people's views you don't like, even if you find them hateful. There is nothing I've ever said which could be remotely construed as anti-Semitic or any dislike or hatred of Jewish people. And he knows that. He really doesn't want to engage with me at all simply because I became more critical of the Israeli government. And I think that's inconsistent with his stance about free speech.
Well, I don't think it's inconsistent with a broad support for free speech to not engage with people who say things that you don't like. It's free speech says that you have the right to say it. It doesn't say that I have the obligation to continue to engage with you when you do say it. So I'd be careful about that. But then, of course, we're getting into fairly personal territory here where only Ben could speak for himself. I would only, again, point out that I think that over the last few years, a lot of people have said, I'm only criticizing Israel. Don't I have the right to criticize a foreign government? Which, of course, you do have the right to criticize a foreign government and your own government or any government. But because that was used as a kind of Trojan horse by so many who have since exposed real anti-Semitism, one can imagine that if you were in the position of Ben Shapiro or other very prominent Jewish figures in the political debate, that would be a tough thing to hear when it's been weaponized by so many. Is that what he's doing? I don't know. Again, I can't speak to.
I don't expect you to speak for him about it. I was just curious because I know Candace fell out with him over the issue of Israel, and I think she has said things which are certainly borderline. Could be construed as anti-Semitic. So I think it's a different situation. But I'll leave her to have that argument with him. Did you fall out with Ben at all personally towards the end?
Well, certainly neither of us set out to see this kind of separation, right? When you get married, you don't think too much about divorce. And Ben and I had a long and very productive partnership over the last 15 years. I mean, really going back before the Daily Wire. I was on the phone with Ben as he walked out of the studio from that infamous when he handed you the Constitution, that infamous appearance that you referenced a little bit ago. So we had a long partnership, and when something like that comes to an end, of course it's going to leave a mark. But we fought in a lot of battles together. We were in the trenches alongside one another for a long time. I think that probably creates a bond that isn't easily broken. As I like to say, if Ben ever needs a kidney, I've got one. I suppose if Caleb needs a kidney, I've got two. If they need a kidney at the same time, they'll have to duke it out because I'm keeping one for myself.
When did you last talk to Ben?
Ben sent me a message on the day that Charlie Kirk was shot. Obviously, Ben and I met Charlie at the same time, at the same event at the Breakers in Florida when Charlie was a teenager. So we both had a very long relationship with Charlie, and Ben sent me a very kind message, just checking on me and the kind of things that would be expressed between two brothers in a moment like that.
One of Candace Owens' accusations has been that Ben was jealous of Charlie Kirk's success and influence, and he wanted to bring down the Turning Point organization. You would be better placed than most to know if that was true. What do you say to that?
No. Well, listen, in public life, we all have little rivalries at times and little jealousies at times. There were times when I got on the wrong side of Charlie, or Charlie got on the wrong side of me, or where, in any of us in the space for whom that may be true. But to say that Ben was engaged in a project to take down TPUSA, that's absurd. Ben and Charlie had a very lengthy relationship. One of Charlie's last guests on his show was Ben Shapiro. And I think that's just indicative of the long relationship that they had. And for the, as far as I ever saw, and I think I had a lot of transparency into it, Charlie would stop by anytime he was in Nashville and check on us at the Daily Wire. So no, I don't think there's any truth to that.
It's very interesting to be watching from the sidelines, if you like, about how it always used to be the case. The conservative right in America would line up full square behind Israel, for example. But now that's not the case. Yeah. Now you see people like Tucker Carlson, you see Candace, you see Dave Smith, you see a lot of people now who are very outspoken against Israel. And you're seeing a real split, I guess, there. What do you make of that? Have you noticed this? Do you feel concerned about it? What's your feel about the way this has gone?
Well, I'd be careful not to conflate Candace Owens, who is sort of the queen of the grift industrial complex, with Tucker Carlson, who, like him or leave him, is engaged in an actual political project. As far as I can tell, Tucker is trying to create a new American majority out of a sort of amalgamation of left-wing economic populism on the one hand and right-wing social populism on the other. He's actively engaged behind the scenes at the White House in staffing decisions. He wields his influence to try to effectuate a political end. I happen to disagree vehemently with him about what I perceive to be the political good, but at least what he's doing is fundamentally political. I don't think what Candace is doing is fundamentally political at all. I think that she's engaged in a kind of self-aggrandizement and click-chasing, audience capture, cynical economic play. I don't perceive that about Tucker.
How best to deal with people like Nick Fuentes? I had him on the show recently. I think 5-6 million people watched it. There's no doubt there's a huge interest in this guy. I think I challenged him pretty robustly over all his views, but his technique was to kind of brazenly just admit most of it. Yeah, I'm a racist. Yeah, I'm this, to mock the Holocaust and so on and so on. It's quite hard to have a serious conversation with somebody that does that kind of thing. His groypers, his followers, loved it, of course. Nobody ends up, they just declare total all-out victory, whatever. I didn't feel I got much out of it, to be honest with you. But, people like him are increasingly popular. I know that you had quite strong views about him. I don't think he appeared at the Daily Wire, certainly not in recent years. What's the best way to handle people like that who are phenomena out there? If you don't platform them, they go unchallenged. If you do, they kind of use it to fuel themselves and become ever more popular. What's the best way, do you think, to handle this? Small businesses drive our economy, but securing capital is a constant struggle. Of the 36 million small businesses in the United States, over 70% report needing additional capital at least once per year. Big banks are burying owners in mountains of paperwork for months. If you want competitive bank rates without all those frustrating bank delays, visit our sponsor, cardiff.co/peers, for up to $500,000 in funding. Cardiff's application takes less than 5 minutes and has no impact on your personal credit. Approvals happen in minutes. Banks try to lock out small businesses. Cardiff has the key. Big banks may not want to approve your business loans, but Cardiff does. If you've been in business for at least a year and you're pulling in $20,000 a month in revenue, apply now for up to $500,000 in the same-day business funding at cardiff.co/peers. Again, that's cardiff.co/peers. Real growth, fast funding.
Well, I do think that it's a flaw in the immune system of popular media that we don't have good tools to deal with people who aren't playing by any sort of rules that we identify. I think the Daily Wire's position under during my tenure was to ignore Nick Fuentes and not to give him any exposure. The problem is, of course, that Nick engages in enormous amounts of irony. His fans understand the plan. They trust the plan. They don't even see the same interview that your average audience member sees. When they watch you talk to Nick Fuentes, it might as well be a completely different show that they're watching, because Nick isn't having the surface level conversation. What he's doing is actually very sophisticated. It's incredibly funny. I mean, I have to admit, I have to mute Nick on social media because I'll watch every clip and laugh 90% of the time. He's very, very talented. And if you see what he's doing, listen, I despise what he's doing. Again, I think that he's also engaged in a true political project. And so I don't want to discount him or be dismissive of him. I think that what Nick Fuentes is doing will have actual political resonance for the rest of our lives. And I think it's a thing.
This intense debate moment between Ben Shapiro and Piers Morgan is grabbing attention online. Strong opinions, sharp responses, and a tense exchange you don't want to miss. Watch till the end and decide who made the stronger argument.